Hey, this is Greg from GMH Audio. Today I'm going to show you how to create an impulse response to make a custom reverb of an actual space. So what is an impulse response, or an IR for short? It's essentially an audio snapshot. You can make an impulse response of any system and capture its frequency response and its time domain response. That includes the microphones, any speakers used, and the space and room itself. In this case, it's my garage and a collection of microphones. Let me show you exactly what my setup is for this. There are definitely more complicated, more advanced ways to do this for more accuracy, but for the purposes of creative sound design, this basic DIY one works just fine. In order to generate an impulse response, you have to play an impulse through something. I use this PV keyboard amp. It's loud and it has a relatively flat frequency response. That yellow cable is coming from the output of my interface. Over there are the microphones I use, and I'll show you those in more detail. I use 3 different mic setups. The first one is this stereo XY pair of Audix pencil condensers. I also used this Audio-Technica cardioid condenser microphone and this vintage Alltech ribbon microphone. They all 3 sound different and are pointed at different places in the garage to get different reflections. Once you've created an impulse response, you could then run audio back through it on your computer, and it will essentially sound like you're running that audio through the system that you made the response of. So in this case, the system is a keyboard amp and some microphones in my garage. So if I run some audio through that later, it'll sound like that sound is coming through that keyboard amp and being recorded by microphones in my garage, which can be really cool because now I can take that sound of my garage with me anywhere I go. Let's pop into Pro Tools and I'll show you the impulse responses that I recorded. This is the Pro Tools session that I use to make these impulse responses. So the first thing in here, this track Impulse, we're talking about impulse responses, so we need an impulse for them to respond to. What is an impulse? It is literally a little blip. I'll play it for you. Just sounds like a little click. And if I zoom in on that, that's right here. This zoomed in all the way. This is one sample, blip, and that's it. And I'll send that out through the amplifier and play that into the room, or in this case, the garage. And then I'll record the result of that. And I did it on these 3 tracks. So this is my cardioid condenser mic, my figure 8 ribbon mic, and my stereo XY mics right here. And this is the response of that blip being played into the garage. That's what it sounds like on the cardioid mic. And then we have the figure 8, which is that old mic and is really kind of a lo-fi sound. And the stereo mics. Great, but they're not quite ready to go. Because it's in my garage, there's like cars driving by on the street, there's kind of background noises, and if I zoom in on these waveforms, that's what this is. And I want to actually kind of cut that off and clean it up so that there's not this hum. You could barely hear it, but it's there when I turn it up, and I don't want that in my impulse responses. So what I did is I have these versions where I just kind of faded that out and cleaned it up with some noise reduction tools. I also normalized them, so they're all about the same volume. So when you compare them and listen to them, you're not going to hear one way louder than the other. They're all going to be about the same. So here's what those sound like now. Here's the cardioid, figure 8, and the stereo. Great. So now what do we do with these? Let's put some sounds through them and see what it sounds like. Let's start with this. It's a snare drum sample. This snare drum I recorded and I sampled because I liked the way it sounded. But that's just raw right off an SM57 mic. Let's hear what it sounds like now with some reverb. In order to do this, you'll need an impulse response loader. I'm using this one, which is called Space. It comes with Pro Tools, and you can get anything that you like. There's a zillion of these. There's a bunch of free ones. Chances are your DAW has one that comes with its stock. And this is the one that comes with Pro Tools. So that's what I'm using. So here's with the bypass, this is just the snare sample. And here's the snare with now the cardioid impulse response on it. So that's my snare in my garage. And we could click on this figure 8 one instead. Or we could even do the stereo one. Pretty cool. We also have this guitar sound. So this is actually the guitar for my little intro bumper music. Let's run that through some garage. Sounds like a guitar amp in a garage. Awesome. So if you want kind of that raw, in the other room, garagey sound, if you want to maybe add some kind of a character reverb or for a lo-fi effect, I think this is the perfect thing. I could even put the garage reverb on my voice, so now it's like I'm talking to you in my garage instead of in my studio. Thanks for watching. If you like the sound of my garage impulse responses, they will be online available for download. I'll put the link in the description and right here. So check that out. You could download these for free and try them out yourself.